here to an all-new AD and DT with Athletics Director Bob Beretta of LeMoyne College, myself, Dan Tortora, aka DT, and we are here with you. Not much is going on the Heights, been super quiet. So, no, all jokes aside, this is our first AD and DT coming off of everything that's happened. So, was able to get out there and break the story, talk about it, talk with you about it in your office, and to do a special AD and DT for that, and then to talk with Noreen Morris, the NEC commissioner, as well as Dr. Linda Lemura, and the chair of the Board of Trustees, Pete DeLaura. So everybody had a voice on that, as well as Mary Grimes for women's basketball. So tremendous event, a lot of stuff to get into. It's all on the homepage of WakeUpCallDT.com to make it easy for everybody. But Bob's mug's up there a couple times, including today. So how are you, sir?
I'm excellent, Dan. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
So you look D1 official.
Yeah, we are. We're D1 official, right?
Okay.
We're ready. We're ready for this. It's been an interesting few days for certain, and just got off our first NEC AD and SWA call, so I guess we're official.
Yeah, and to have this done. It's that feeling, right? So in the media, into the world, you announce it, everybody says yes, confetti, and then before that confetti hits the ground, you're working, right? And one of the biggest things is making sure that these teams moving forward at LeMoyne College have the schedule that they need. So let's start there. What are we doing schedule-wise to make sure that they're ready for the NEC?
Yeah, and it's really interesting time, Dan, because we're behind the 8 ball for our fall sports. If you think about it, our fall sports begin practice here in 2 months. Yeah. And now our athletes will come back earlier, in some cases, than they were scheduled to while we were a member of the NE10 conference, different regulations around when they can come back, different financial components, and now trying to build a non-conference schedule from scratch for a lot of our coaches who had Division II non-conference schedule ready to roll, and now they've had to change that. Now, we talked to them, and we knew this was a possibility, and so I believe that our coaches were prepared well. They started to have some conversations with non-conference competition opponents, possible D1 opponents, for the past several weeks, but until we actually made an announcement and made that decision, that they couldn't move forward and execute that. But I think that's really been our short term since last week. We've been really focused on communicating with our current student athletes, communicating with our recruits, and then really trying to hunker down on the scheduling. And I've met with almost all of our head coaches on scheduling, philosophies, direction. Let's take a look at what makes sense. And I think we look at each one with a holistic view, and every game that we're talking about in the non-conference space is different because it brings a different set of variables and a different set of value to us.
What is the focus? I would imagine with all these schools in the state of New York that are Division I, there's a group of them inside of the NEC, but outside of that, have you sat down with coaches in general and said, the Syracuse, the Niagara, the St. Bonaventure calls, the Binghamtons, the Colgates, the Cornells. Has that been a topic of discussion?
It has been, Dan, and I've talked to coaches, and it depends on the sport, but how we kind of break down the schedules and look at the conference games, and then how many games they want to play overall, how many are left in the non-conference space. Do they want to play any non-Division I games because they're allowed to do that and permitted to do so? And if you want to play a non-Division I game or two, you extract that, and then you start to take a look at where strategically makes the most sense. Are we going to look at some local schools that are within a day trip for us from a financial standpoint? Is there a really cool trip that we can take our kids on, our student athletes, and deliver that exceptional experience that we've talked about? And so we look at everything holistically. We take a look at what a trip can mean, where the value lies. Is it in competition? Is it an experience? Is it somewhere that just makes a lot of sense from a geographical footprint? We begin new rivals with some of our Central New York and Western New York colleagues. So all those things make it for a very exciting time, and I think it's kind of exciting for our coaches because they have this blank tableau now, and they can look at it and they can really build from scratch, working with Mary Grimes and Nate Champion on their schedules. And I think when it comes time to release those schedules, they're going to be exciting. Our players are going to be really excited about it. Our fans are going to be really excited about it. I'm excited about just knowing kind of where we're headed right now. So all in all, I think it's added an awful lot of life around the building down here the last couple of days, that's for sure.
What can you tell us?
I can't tell you anything now because we don't have anything set, but I can tell you that we're talking about playing some elite brands in all sports, and I know that something we talked about. It's important who you play against, and just transitioning to Division I now opens up that whole new world for us. Not only our local geographic footprint, but some brand name opportunities, and some of them are in the ACC, and some of them are in the Big Ten, and some of them are in the Big East, and some of them are in the MAAC, and we're talking about competitions against all those types of schools, and I think it's going to be really exciting for our players. You know, I think that there was a faction of players that were nervous about this transition, and I think little by little, as they see what this really means and what this opens up to them from an experiential standpoint, it's pretty cool. And I think that they're really going to embrace it. I think they're going to represent this institution exceedingly well, and I think they're going to be extremely excited about it when they see a final product, just in the schedule alone. And then there's some other things that we're going to be able to do in terms of bulking up some staffs over the course of 3 years that are going to just lead to more development opportunities for them. So, yeah, great times here on the Heights.
How does it work when you're transitioning from D2 to D1 with the reality that in Division I in general, they were going to be able to add another staff member? So how does that all work? I mean, do you kind of just get grandfathered right into saying, you know, this, you have X number on your staff, now you can have this? I mean, how is it going to work for you staffing wise, like you said, that you can build up those staffs? And I know that Division I in this reconfiguration of the NCAA has taken a look at expanding staff.
Right, so one thing that we took a lot of time, and I credit my staff, in particular Tim Fenton, who worked very closely with me and built a lot of our modeling back in the fall. Yet we looked at where we could be realistically from a staffing component, from a budget standpoint, from a scholarship standpoint. And we want to kind of look and be, we said our standard right now is like the median of the MAAC, right? I'm sorry, the median of the NEC. And we looked at the MAAC as well at the time, because we didn't know if we might gain an invitation to the MAAC or the NEC, but those were the two conferences we were focused on. So we did some modeling against those two schools, those two groups of schools, I should say, and where we would fall in terms of budgeting and all those things, whether it's scholarships, whether it's our recruiting budget, whether it's our staffing, our salaries, all those things. And we mapped it out over 3 years because we knew that this was going to take a strategic look at things and spread out the costs. And we looked at a 3-year period. So we have a model in place that shows where each program is going to be scholarship-wise, and if they need to increase a great deal or not much at all, but how we can sequence that. Sequencing was a big part of this, and that's what we're doing now. We're looking at sequencing our coaches, our staff, our salaries, and we looked at prioritizing certain areas where maybe we were a little more thin from a staffing standpoint, and so those are the kinds of things right now. Our scholarships, because we're through this recruiting cycle right now for the most part, we didn't add a whole lot for this coming academic year, but then they'll be added. I think over the course of 3 years, we talked about adding in upwards of 30 scholarships across the board to get us to where we need to be in every sport to kind of be in the middle of the pack of the NEC.
So when you look at that, like you said, sequential work over a 3-year span, you mentioned so many different topics. Let's start with salary. How do you tackle that over the next 3 years?
Yeah, so quite frankly, you know, and I haven't had the conversation with our coaches yet, but we looked at where the NEC model looks like, and we kind of took a look at what our colleagues and what our peers are and tried to be very similar to as we mentioned. And so we looked at what a final number would look like, and then we're going to spread it out over 3 years in each case to try to get, and in some cases, there's not a great deal of variance from where we are currently. And in some cases, there's some jumps, maybe not a large jump, but a large jump. And in some cases, there is an exponential jump in certain sports. So we have to look at how we can phase those in a way that is feasible for the school from a financial standpoint, and something that we feel really comfortable about for our individuals, and they feel good about our plan in place. So haven't had a chance to specifically sit with our coaches with each one. I'm going to do that next week, but we do have that sequential plan that includes salaries and scholarships and budgets and all of that.
And when you look at, like you said, scholarships, building that over time, and what you need to do in that respect, as well as recruiting budget, where is that comparative to where you are right now when it comes to recruiting and it comes to scholarships? I know you talked about adding, maybe somewhere in the world of 30 scholarships across the board, but how much is this going to kind of hit monetarily for LeMoyne when it comes to scholarship money as well as recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, we've been very open about that. We estimated that the overall cost would increase to about $4 million of gross expenditure a year. Now there's significant revenue streams that are going to be available to us, and they're already available to us through some of the guarantee games that we're scheduling right now that weren't available at the Division II level to offset some of that cost. But we thought that we'd probably be in the $2 million range in net cost per year, and we were going to have to defray that against fundraising. We've said that from day one, that fundraising needed to be a big part of this, and we're going to be out on the road this summer and be very aggressive in that space. But we also, for this first year, the number is going to be significantly less than that, because a great deal of that number, that $4 million, is in the scholarship piece, candidly. And this year it's mitigated because we didn't add a lot of scholarships. We just added a couple because we were that far down the path in the recruiting cycle. But that number will bump up for the next year and the year after that, as we try to take a look and, again, place ourselves in a spot where we're competitive with our NEC colleagues, and that's where we were with the NE10. We were competitive with our NE10 colleagues. It wasn't that we were at the bottom or at the top in all sports. There were some sports that we were at the top, some that we were at the bottom, and I would expect the same to be the case in the NEC. But we've tried to model a plan that looks pretty similar to where we were in the NE10 in terms of the scholarshiping. In some sports, we're not going to have to add a whole lot. We're already in the upper third of what the NEC offers. In some cases, we have some work to do. I'll give you a great example, and this is men's and women's basketball. The maximum allowed equivalencies in men's and women's basketball Division II is 10. We were at 10, and we will be at the maximum allowed number in Division I, but that grows. So on the women's side, it grows from 10 to 15. Yeah. On the men's side, it grows from 10 to 13. So there's 8 of the scholarships that we're talking about right now that need to be, and we have to be at the maximum level by year 3 of the reclassification for membership in the NEC. So we have to phase those 8 scholarships as part of the other group as well over 3 years. And so we're looking at every sport individually. We're looking at see how they stack up, how that specific sport stacks up within the NEC, and we're going to be very competitive in those numbers. We're going to be very competitive in the scholarship numbers. We're going to be very competitive in the salary numbers, and we'll be very competitive in the staffing. If not, maybe in some sports we'll be more heavily staffed than some of our colleagues.
And staffing-wise, why do you feel like you're going to be so competitive? Do you feel that since this news has come through, on top of the success you've already had in connecting with the local community and the community around the country and the world, that LeMoyne's already done, do you feel like since that move to D1 has been made official, that you've had an influx of people wanting to come and work on staff?
I think you'd have to talk to each coach, and we haven't announced any new positions, and that will be forthcoming here within the next week or two, that we'll start to advertise for some new positions, both administratively and coaching wise. But I think coaches have been fielding calls from people that are interested. I know that talking to some of our coaches today, they're receiving calls from people that help deliver players to programs that are now calling us and saying, I have a player for you, that before was saying, we don't have anybody for you, because that player wanted to play D1, and now we were out of the conversation, and now we're directly in the middle of the conversation. So I think that goes on from staffing perspective to recruiting as well. And I fielded some calls, right, from some people that I know in the industry that are now really interested in potentially coming to work at LeMoyne, because we're a Division I institution. So there's that the great stigma of D1 that is an allure to people, to young people and to adults, and so it's something that can't be argued. It's a fact.
How do you stay LeMoyne despite the move to D1? Because you and I have talked about how people can lose themselves, right? You can lose your mission, you can lose your vision, you can lose the beauty of what a lot of people see in D2 and D3, which is still a love of the game,
Yeah.
and not so much like the millions of dollars and these crazy balloon contracts and whatnot. So how does LeMoyne stay true to who they are? How do you stay true to who you are in D1?
I think it's a great responsibility for me as the athletic director, but also our staff here, and certainly our leadership, to make sure that sports stays aligned completely with a mission. I'm tremendously dedicated to that. I've said it since the day I arrived at LeMoyne, that athletics serves the institution. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
And that we won't lose sight of alignment, and that we're here to support the academic mission of the institution. That will never change, whether we were going to reclassify down to Division III or move to Division I. In fact, we're just putting the final touches on our strategic plan that we've worked on the past several weeks as a department, and that we have to submit to the NCAA. And we nested our strategic plan with a new strategic plan that was just developed and released publicly. I don't even know if it's been released publicly yet, the college's strategic plan. It's going to be titled Tomorrow Together, and our provost spearheaded that committee to put that strategic plan together, and we nested our strategic plan with Tomorrow Together. So if that's not complete alignment, nothing is. So it's incumbent on me as the athletic director and the person that oversees this department to make sure that we don't lose our way, and that we know our true north is the academic mission of this institution. The LeMoyne way really guides our character set, our value set here as a department, and we'll stay true to our mission.
Where people get confused in this move, and you and I have talked about this on and off the air, but the reality of the hiatus, right? The 2 years so you're inside of the NEC as of July 1st, 2023. You're competing with NEC teams, right, for everything except for men's lacrosse, which is independent this upcoming season. But you're an NEC member, but you're not playing in the NEC postseason for 2 years, and you cannot go into the NCAA postseason for 4 years unless rules are changed. So you are a member, but there's this kind of like holding pattern, purgatory type of thing. How do you navigate through that? And are you in hopes that, because I spoke with Noreen Morris, the NEC commissioner, about this, because she was on a committee that was looking at this, are you in hopes that the NCAA will say, hey, if there's a 2-year hiatus at a conference, then the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament will match each other instead of the NCAA doubling the amount of time you have to wait?
There's no question. We would love for the NCAA to re-examine that policy, and I think that perhaps during the course of this 4-year reclassification period, there may be a reduction, but we also have to accept the terms in which we signed up for, and so we know as of right now there's a 4-year sit-out period. On the NEC side, we talked to Noreen about that during the process, and they're going to take a look at it. It's actually in the contract that they will take a look at that 2-year wait, the sit-out period for LeMoyne, and potentially reduce it. No guarantees, but they'll take a look at it and talk about it. They're going to do that in their presidential meetings here next month, a couple weeks from now. And again, with no guarantees that they will reduce it. They did reduce it from 4 to 2 last year. It's 2 right now. We've asked for that to be completely eliminated. Will that happen? I don't know. We hopefully it'll be reduced, even if it's by a year. But if not, we understand the terms in which we agreed to, and if it's 2 years, it's 2 years, and we're going to do our best to deliver a championship experience to our student athletes on a daily basis, and we're working that already in terms of our scheduling, about who we're going to play, the venues, the trips, all those kinds of things. So it's incumbent on us to make sure that we deliver a championship experience regardless.
And is that how a very exciting non-conference kind of tour, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, Dan. That and just the enhanced experience in terms of, we're going to ramp up how our student athletes travel. They're going to see some benefits, whether it's the per diem, whether it's the hotel allotments that the teams get. I mean, all that's been factored into an increase here. Some of the trips that we're talking about, hopefully they're lifetime memories. You know, when you think about a national championship, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but very few athletes compete for national championships at the Division I level every year, year in, year out. It's really hard to do, to be an annual contender at any level, even in, you know, outside of the top 5 or 6 in football at the Division I level, they seem to just always be the same teams that are vying for a national championship. The other sports, there's great transition and turnover every year. So you won't find that dominance where every year we're competing for national champions. Very few athletes do. And I think that we have to just redefine success. And I think that that's something I've been very open about, is that joining a Division I conference is going to put a premium on winning a conference championship. I think, candidly, this is something that bothers me at the Division II level, is that sometimes the conference championship is diminished because the eyes are set on that national tournament, because access is so great to the national tournament that if you win, sometimes student athletes don't celebrate it like I believe they should and value it, because they say, hey, the bigger prize is the national championship. In reality, at LeMoyne, there's been one team here that's competed for national championships year in, year out. Just one. It's been men's lacrosse. Yeah. 17 of 21 seasons, they've been in the national semifinals. That team has competed for national championships year in, year out. That's not going to happen at Division I. It doesn't happen at Division I for the powers. It's just, to be a contender for the national championship every year, it's difficult. Will we be a contender for our conference championship every year? Absolutely, I expect that. I expect us then to be able to be a contender for the AQ, to get into that conference, and to potentially win a game or two every year. Absolutely. And you know what? You could catch lightning in a bottle. Cornell last year lost in the championship game, and this year they got knocked out in the first round, right? So, yeah. I mean, that's how it goes. But I think that in this transition, I will like to, that our athletes are going to value conference championships again, because I do believe that was diminished. And I also say this, there's kind of been a fallback that if you don't win the conference championship, oh, that's okay, because we got, you know, we have a bigger prize. And I'm not against the bigger prize, but I think the conference championship has been devalued to a degree. And that struck me here this spring from several of our teams. And I'm really actually looking forward to seeing student athletes really get excited about conference championships again.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is it's such a, like you said, national championship is such a hard thing to do once, let alone back to back or within the same decade. There's teams that you might see get in one year and then not even make the, you know, not make the championship game. They don't even make the tournament. So, you know, when you're a conference champion and you can consistently compete at that level, then you know you're going to, you know, be a representative of that, and that's a banner. You know, that's something to put up, and LeMoyne has been able to have so many of those that you hope, you know, the move to the NEC, that there is a focus on conference championships and competing in that respect. It's tough to have, you know, a holding pattern. I would love the NCAA to equal out the conferences, because it doesn't make sense to have a postseason for 2 that you have to wait and then 4. And so, I mean, we'll see. But you're an NEC team. You are a full member as of July 1st, 2023. I think people need to know that. It's not that you become a full member 2 years after because of the conference tournaments. I mean, you are a full member. It's just the rules that be. Before we go, you mentioned the $2 million number. Bring me into the mathematics and the economics of where we go from here.
Yeah, so again, we built out a plan, and initially we expected that number that we were going to spend this year to be much higher than what we're going to actually spend this year. So it's going to be much more cost effective for us this year to compete at the Division I level. I think that there are, again, revenue streams that will be available to LeMoyne once the reclassification period is over, that's going to offset that number consistently in a large way. We talked about this from day one. Fundraising was going to need to ramp up here at LeMoyne, and it's something that we have a plan in place to go out there and talk to folks that have said for years that if LeMoyne were to reclassify Division I, that they would be all in to help support that move. So we're going to be trying to call in some of those promises here in the weeks and months ahead to support this initiative. But we understand that there was an added expense to going to Division I. I mean, we spent an awful lot of time talking about that as a committee, the Board of Trustees, and we're going to do our best to be very thrifty, to be great stewards of our resources. But there is an added investment, and when we talk about most of it lies in scholarships and some of it in staffing, where we're ramping up. Prior to this year, prior to right now, as we speak right now, LeMoyne has 2 full-time assistant coaches. That's it in our athletic department. One on the men's basketball side and one on the women's basketball side. Every other assistant coach on our staff is a part-time coach. So that has to change. We knew that was going to change in a reclassification. At the end of a 3-year period, we're going to have full-time assistant coaches with every program.
Yeah.
Some will be instituted sooner than others.
Yeah.
Some might get 2 full-time assistant coaches during that period to match kind of what the NEC members are doing. So that's where I talk about the student-athlete experience, where maybe they don't see a direct impact to them on the surface, but if you peel a layer of the layers of the onion back and see, hey, more coaches mean more development time for me. That's a direct impact. That's impacting the student-athlete experience maybe better than anything. As an athlete, you want to go to a place where you're going to get developed to the highest level of your potential. And that's when we look for coaches. That's in my mission statement. We're looking for a coach that's going to come in here and develop our student athletes so they achieve at the highest level of their potential. And you can't do that if you have one head coach and a part-time coach who's trying to manage a roster of 30 or 40 people. It's very difficult to do that. So this move is going to help us impact our student-athlete development in a way that we weren't able to do so beforehand.
You and I had talked in the past about the potential when you were in the NE10 in Division II to look at adding a sport or two.
Yes.
Going into the NEC, is that still a thought?
It is a thought, and I know people asked us last week, are you thinking about eliminating sports, or will there be a trade-off if you add, you'll diminish? And we have no intention of downsizing our athletic program. We're of a mind to increase. We're looking, and we've been pretty public about the sports that we're going to look at. First of all, we want to be a good partner to the NEC, so we want to take a look at where they could use additional members in terms of sports sponsorship. And I think 2 of the sports that make a lot of sense for us are women's bowling and men's volleyball. Part of that is because those aren't facilities that we would need to construct to be able to bring those sports in. Women's bowling, we would strike a partnership with a local house, and that's where we would bowl. And on men's volleyball side, we have our Ted Grant court, and that's where the men's volleyball team would play. So we're undergoing a study right now, looking at the event center. We need to expand. We need to grow our locker room space. We need to add locker rooms. It's all part of this, but those 2 sports are very appealing to us, and we find hockey to be exceedingly compelling. We really do. We feel like we're in a hotbed for hockey and lacrosse. Obviously, our lacrosse programs are flourishing here in Central New York, and we feel like hockey would really thrive here on the Heights as well. So it's a matter of finding a facility, maybe an existing facility. It might be a facility that could be constructed, maybe not by LeMoyne. That's one thing that we're not looking at, because building an ice hockey facility is tremendously expensive. Sacred Heart just built one for $75 million. And we're not looking to build an ice rink here on campus, but there's some other opportunities maybe in the region where they're talking about possibly constructing a rink, or is there an existing facility where we could fit in? We'd love to add men's and women's ice hockey here. We have men's ice hockey, a club team, and we wanted to add women's ice hockey last year. We didn't gain the traction. We're going to take another shot at trying to build a women's ice hockey club team this year as well. But I think that those 4 programs would be really natural fits for us here, and something we'll be taking a look at now. Now that the reclassification won't be dominating our time, we'll be able to sit out and explore some other new and really exciting initiatives for the college.
There's so many things to talk about and so many places to go, but from the day we started work together that I believe you should lead with your heart. So what about this experience for you after 34 years at a Division I institution in Army West Point, bringing a school from Division II to Division I? What has this experience done for your heart, and what are you thankful for?
Well, Boy, I could stay all day and talk about what I'm thankful for. I'm so grateful to our president, Dr. Lemura. I'm so grateful for Bob Reclitus, who chaired our ad hoc committee on athletics reclassification, and the former board chair who was in place when we started this process. Grateful to Pete DeLaura, the current board chair. They really shaped the mindset of so many people and bought into this vision. I'm grateful for Joe Grasso, our VP for Administration and Finance, because without his support, I don't think any of this would be possible. I'm thankful for our VP team, our entire senior leadership team that's on board, our ad hoc committee members, that we had some unbelievable conversations over the past 12 months, and some were supportive of this move and others weren't supportive initially, and the more we talked it through, we heard countering opinions, and we just had an unbelievable discernment process. And at the end of the day, when we voted in February or whenever it was this winter, it was a unanimous vote to move to Division I. So I'm so thankful for the minds on this campus that were open, our hearts were open to this. So those are just some of the things I'm grateful for. I could go on and on and on. And I'm really excited to talk about what I've felt in my heart. In my heart of hearts, I believe this is the right move for the institution. I believe it's a positive step in our strategy for growth, from an admissions standpoint, from an engagement standpoint. I think this is going to raise the profile of LeMoyne exponentially. And I think that can only lead to more interest and more fundraising success and more applications. I hope that that's going to be the case. I think as we grow our rosters and our programs, that's going to lead to some more opportunities for young people to come and play at the Division I level. And then ultimately, I played at the Division I level. I worked my entire career at the Division I level before I got to LeMoyne, and I'm a firm believer in the Division I experience, and I just feel like our student athletes deserve that. And I know that some of them are a little anxious right now, because in some cases they just don't know what they don't know. There's not a great difference between their demands on their time or their talent levels, but somehow along the way, I think some of them were stigmatized that they weren't worthy of a Division I experience, and they are. Our student athletes deserve the best. They deserve the opportunity to compete in elite venues. They deserve the opportunity to compete against elite talent. They deserve the opportunity to walk away from LeMoyne with lifetime memories through athletics, and we're going to be able to deliver that now in a way that we never could before at the Division II level. That's just a fact.
Syracuse, you have a Division I school right here in your backyard, and it is a beautiful thing to talk about the history that creates to have another school right here, the Dolphins. Green and gold, you need to get used to wearing it and used to seeing it. There are so many things coming up. My heart is happy because I have been, by your graciousness and Dr. Linda Lemura and Pete DeLaura and everybody, I've been a part of this the whole time. You've allowed me to be a part of it, and it's something that I may never get to do for the rest of my life, is be a part of reclassification and realignment. I thank you, and I thank everybody here at LeMoyne for just letting me not see this from the outside and let me see it from the inside, and the ups and downs and around the corners. I mean, my heart is full because you deserve it, and I know when I did rapid fire with Linda, she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Linda, there's no doubt in my mind from everything I know," and this was a while ago, I said, "there is nothing on this campus that is not D1 to me." I said, "This has been a D1 institution to the highest of merits for as long as I've known it." So, am I surprised? No. Am I excited? Absolutely. And am I honored? Tremendously. And you all gave that to me, so thank you.
Well, we can't thank you enough, Dan. I've said this over and over. We talk about who you play against matters. Well, who you partner with matters as well. And we made this decision 2 years ago, and it's been, it was spot on. It was the right decision to make the partner with someone who shares our value set, who provides a platform, believes in our mission, believes in our student athletes, and no one's told the story of our student athletes better consistently than you have over this period of time. And I'm just thrilled to be able to take this journey with you. I hope that I will never be part of another athletics reclassification again in my career. It's really, you think about it, not a lot of people have an opportunity to be part of an athletics reclassification, a transition, and we're part of that together. And I know that you're going to continue to tell the stories of our wonderful student athletes, and whether it's D1, D2, D3, it's just a little bit different experiences for them. Yeah, I think that we're all going to go through this with our eyes wide open and our hearts full, and I think at the end of the day, I think our student athletes will be the beneficiaries of this move in so many ways.
Yeah, my heart's excited. It's that happy feel, right? When you know, like you're standing with your toes on the edge of that cliff, saying, "I could fly." So it's now time to do that. It's time to fly. It's time to swim. And as always, fins up.
Yeah, fins up, Dan. It is time to swim. Well put.
Appreciate it. We'll talk with you all soon.